sir. I'm sure you were. I'm sure you were. And I'm sure the honourable member who replaced you is equally proud. But, Mr. Speaker, sir, the issue for us in Barbados, because we have to answer a few questions for the public in this matter. Why are we doing this? We're doing this, Mr. Speaker, as I said, in order to broaden this Barbados economy, in order to make it more productive, in order to put us in a position to employ more of our people, Mr. Speaker, in order to give us a sense of resilience and to deepen the economic independence and the competitiveness of this country. We cannot do that, and we have never been able to do those things without taking along, first of all, the people of Barbados who form the pool of labor. Because in every chapter of this country's history, the one indispensable part of the conversation, sir, has been the people of Barbados and the labor that they provide. Now, Mr. Speaker, sir, when we talk about the Seafarers Bill, we are talking about maritime labor, and we're speaking about the people who work in the marine conditions of this country and who will work in the future in the marine environment that we are going to be building out. Now, let us also recognize that because we are not the shipbuilders of the world, and because we are not the part of the world which coordinates shipping lines, etc., we are not the drivers of industry globally, then the contribution that Barbados will almost inexorably have to make is being the supply state, or one of the supply states, for labor. And so therefore, with regard to maritime seafarers, Mr. Speaker, sir, there will be people from Barbados who will be drawn from that wide pool, that body of people who must give their work in the marine space. But we can't just send them into the marine space to work, Mr. Speaker, sir. There must be conditions of safety and there must be conditions of security of employment. In the same way that those conditions of safety and security operate in the terrestrial, the land-based part of Barbados. When I speak of security, Mr. Speaker, sir, in the maritime space, let me also say that one of the issues that this piece of legislation will speak to is the question of food security. You got people working on a ship. You have people working on an oil rig. You have people working on some other autonomous vessel plying its trade in Barbados waters, but they must be able to be properly provisioned so as not to be exploited. And it must be recognized, Mr. Speaker, that that is not what we would say on the street, a nene or poo-poo thing. That is a very real consideration, because even today, in long-standing sectors of the Barbados economy, there are those people who still have to fight up in order to get an adequate time to have lunch, or under contracts of employment, Mr. Speaker, sir, are still being told that the understanding with regard to breaks for their refreshment and so on are things that they must be confronting a challenge about. Now, Mr. Speaker, shipboard living is different to living in your house. And working conditions on board a vessel are different, sir, to working in the average place of employment in Barbados. And those things must also be subject to negotiation with trade unions. And so the legislation will speak, sir, to the power of opportunity of collective bargaining, etc. But where I'm most pleased about this legislation is with respect, sir, to the issue of standards that will be brought to bear in the labor environment of our marine space, and the level of training and the standards of training that must now be put in place as we empower, and not the word I use, Mr. Speaker, sir, as we empower and give opportunity, unprecedented opportunity, to the young people of Barbados who, as a result of this piece of legislation, will now be able to find sources of employment in a wide cross-section of areas of economic opportunity, whether it be on board cruise ships, whether it be on board oil rigs, whether it be on board supply vessels, etc., Mr. Speaker, sir. But that is now going to be treated to in the same way that we have historically had major unions in Barbados sitting down and having collective bargaining relationships with the hoteliers in this country, with the captains of industry in this country. Mr. Speaker, sir, this is now the new space where we have opportunity, not only for training, but also for certification. And that is valuable because, sir, if you have the certification, you then have the qualification, sir, that you can not only work here, but that you can go elsewhere across borders in order to give of your skills and the expertise that you are accumulating. And so, Mr. Speaker, sir, this piece of legislation really is about unleashing the pent-up potential of the future of Barbados, the people of Barbados. And so, Mr. Speaker, I begin by saying that I am particularly pleased about that. Now, I have on more than one occasion referenced oil rigs, and that is because, quite properly so, the legislation also speaks to the area of oil and gas exploration. And I want now to turn to the other piece of legislation which accompanies this, and that is the Maritime Areas Jurisdiction and Rights Bill of 2026. A cognate debate, we're dealing with both at the same time. And it is under that Maritime Areas Jurisdiction and Rights Bill, Mr. Speaker, sir, that we are looking at how we coordinate and how we regulate activities within the purview of coastal state control. And that is a mouthful of language. What basically it means is how we regulate the activities that are under the control of Barbados's coast and beyond our coast, Mr. Speaker, sir. And we've heard the honourable member who piloted this bill take us as far out as the exclusive economic zone, 200 miles, and onto the continental shelf. And that's, Mr. Speaker, sir, that is a concept that is now also complemented by another ongoing matter about which we cannot afford to remain silent during the course of this debate. Because again, the politics is not to be ignored that it is this government that for the first time, sir, brought to this country a way of zoning and mapping the ocean space around Barbados so as to have a marine spatial plan and to bring, sir, a sense of a strategic framework for the management of our marine resources, sir, and to remove the haphazard way that we have treated our maritime space historically. And in case you have forgotten, Mr. Speaker, and I'm sure you have not, it would have been in and around January of 2023 that this country began a marine spatial plan exercise. And why did we do it, Mr. Speaker, sir? We had to do it because there was and still continues to be an urgent need for location of activity and location of types of activity. And if you think about the beaches when you were a little boy, sir, you ain't gonna go further than the beach. You see it. We do not and have not traditionally mapped out the activities that are taking place along the coast. So you have the nearshore fishermen operating right alongside the jet ski men. And the jet ski men and the nearshore fishermen operating alongside the recreational swimmers. And you can go on and on and on. And as we've had more and more maritime activity taking us away from the coast and further into the ocean, Mr. Speaker, sir, we still have that haphazard way of doing things. And there has to be a point at which we say, hold, enough, let us map out a strategic framework for management of the marine space so that all and sundry understand what is and what is not allowed, and enables us, sir, to get past the disorganized activities where whosoever will may come. In addition to that, the benefit of it, Mr. Speaker, sir, is that we have sector-by-sector management. Again, an policy weakness of this country, in that we did not have an effective way of managing sector by sector all of those activities that are taking place in our maritime space. And of course, Mr. Speaker, sir, the net effect of this exercise would be that ultimately you end up with an integrated approach that balances economic growth on one hand with environmental protection and the protection of human beings on the other. And I think, Mr. Speaker, sir, it would be fair to say that the Honourable Member for St. Michael South, and indeed the Honourable Member, where Adrian from? Christchurch, Cross West Central, have spoken to these matters in their respective capacities as the ministers responsible for the maritime space, blue economy, whatever you may wish to call it, Mr. Speaker, sir. Now, as I said before, people like to talk about diversifying the economy, but they do not like to talk about the hard work that has to be done in order to put us in a position to have the economy diversified. So by having these various pieces of legislation, and the initiative like maritime spatial planning, Mr. Speaker, sir, you then have the infrastructure in place that allows you now to come to the economic activity, because we have a modernized economy. We accept that Barbados's marine space is 425 times the size of our terrestrial or land space. And so therefore, sir, we are not only planning a Barbados of 166 square miles, we are planning a Barbados of economic activity and economic opportunity and employment opportunity 425 times the size of the 166 square miles, sir, that we now have. And so, Mr. Speaker, sir, in that modern economic structure, what then are some of the things that we can do? I want to begin, sir, with the discussion of oil and gas opportunity. And there are those who may raise an eyebrow and say, but they're going back in the ocean, but the oil and gas, we thought they ain't bothering with that. And the reality is, Mr. Speaker, sir, we had a long time reflecting on the nature of the opportunities which present themselves to this country. We at no stage will turn our face away from the ambition towards moving as swiftly as possible to being 100% fossil fuel free as an economy and relying on renewable energy, having an economy driven by renewable energy, Mr. Speaker, sir. And the obvious reasons for doing that is because that gives us energy independence. We don't have to be holding our bellies in woe every time a noise breaks out in the Persian Gulf, as is now the case, and every day you have to be peeping at the world reports on oil prices to see what next coming down the chute, or with trepidation you turn on CNN to see what somebody did to some other country, and the consequences for Barbados may or may not be. If you're generating your own energy, you don't have to do that. You emancipate yourself from those shackles. Then, Mr. Speaker, sir, you have the competitiveness of the country, because by removing the middlemen associated with oil production and importation, et cetera, then, Mr. Speaker, sir, you just come to generating your power here in Barbados from your renewable sources here in Barbados, whether they be wind or sun, and then, Mr. Speaker, sir, you are in a position to more effectively, positively impact the cost of doing business and positively impact the cost of living, driving the cost of living down, making life easier for the people of Barbados and the people doing business in Barbados. And by no means least, Mr. Speaker, sir, it is environmentally more sanitary and salutary. And of course, sir, you get a lot more resilience for your country and economy if it is that you're going by way of renewables. So I am one who don't agree that it is a hoax. Others may feel it is that. But Mr. Speaker, sir, the reality is that there are still those out there who sing the tune, drill, baby, drill. There are still those out there who say to the world they want more oil and want more gas. There are still those out there who say that they are not transitioning at the same rate or with the same ambition that we do. And we do this, Mr. Speaker, sir, because we are on the cusp of climate change, and we understand that whenever you have a Category 3, Category 2 storm, Category 1, everybody in Barbados hold their breath in anticipation of what could happen, and heaven forbid it get higher up the category line, because then you don't know what on earth could take place. And so therefore, sir, you keep, every year we go through this and have always gone through it. Now, with regard to those folks who don't understand life the way we do, they still tell you that they want to have oil and gas and that they want to have it until the year 2050 and beyond. And Mr. Speaker, sir, if that's what they want to do, then there's obviously a market for those who wish to do that. Now we, sir, are told that because we have done substantial seismic studies and so on, and I'm going to come to that, that there is opportunity for us in that particular marketplace. So what has happened? Since the 11th of February, the people of Barbados, in their wisdom, re-elected this government. 1. 2. As Minister responsible for energy, sir, I took to Cabinet a policy paper which reflected to the Cabinet the fact that it is now possible to have a mixed-use energy policy. And what is that? That is the energy policy, sir, that continues to speak to the journey that we're on with regard to renewables and renewable energy in all of its facets, while at the same time recognizing, Mr. Speaker, sir, that there are several other countries in the world which are also looking at how they can explore and continue to exploit economic opportunity in the oil and gas area. Natural gas, sir, is globally understood now to be that fuel which will be a bridge between where we now stand and where we want to be in the future. So natural gas around the world, no exceptions anywhere, that is the bridge. And people want natural gas. So, lo and behold, it is possible, they say, that we may have substantial resources to be found within the jurisdictional waters of Barbados. And so therefore, why not have a policy that enables us to exploit those opportunities? We say, Mr. Speaker, sir, that if we are going to go there, we want to do so in a way that is as environmentally friendly as possible. And lo and behold, there are now leading oil and gas companies, some of the giants of this globe, which are saying to the world that they have advanced their technological know-how to the point where they can reduce, if not fully remove, the methane emissions. And let me say to you that methane, sir, is, the Honourable Member for Christchurch West Central will tell you, sir, it is a fatal asphyxiant. You can become asphyxiated as a result of methane. We know, Mr. Speaker, sir, that it is said to be 80 to 85 times more potent and devastating over a 20-year period than is carbon dioxide. So therefore, Mr. Speaker, sir, what the energy companies are saying is they can reduce, if not fully remove, methane. We say to them, well, that sounds positive because that is where we stand on our renewable journey. That's what we've been telling the world in the Bridgetown Initiative. That's what our Prime Minister has been lambasted in this House and outside of this House by people in this country who are more short-sighted than we, sir, and who perhaps are not as well read on these matters as they should be, or worse yet, well-intentioned as they should be. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, sir, we have collectively carried that cross to our respective Calvaries. But, Mr. Speaker, the reality is that if we can find companies that are doing methane emissions, pursuing a decarbonizing policy, then, Mr. Speaker, those are the companies that we are prepared to work with. So then what does the Cabinet say to me when I take this paper there? The Cabinet says, well, Minister, that seems to be something that makes sense, and we will sign off on it. And they gave permission for us to enter into direct negotiations as opposed to going through a global bid process, which will be more time-consuming. So having thought it through, having worked through all of the positives and negatives of the argument, the policy now stands, Mr. Speaker, sir, that we will enter into direct negotiations, and I think they will be announced on the 1st of June this year with companies which must pre-qualify on the basis of those things I've just spoken to. Demonstrate to Barbados your capacity, proven capacity with regard to clean energy, with regard to reducing methane, with regard to a decarbonizing policy. This is what, if this is what you do, if this is the technology that you have, demonstrate it, pre-qualify, and we're prepared to have direct negotiations with you. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, sir, we should, in short order, be able to say to the country who we're talking to, and hopefully where we are going with regard to the future of this matter. Now, obviously, sir, there has been substantial research done over the course of the years with regard to the seismic tests off of Barbados. There have been both 2D and 3D seismic surveys done. And as I indicated, sir, the rocks have been studied. The locations are now, or the locations which seem to have good prospectivity, are now known and identified. Many of them are in ultra-deep water, which is another criteria that companies will have to meet, because everybody does not have the capacity to go into ultra-deep water successfully. And that means, sir, you've got to go down perhaps 14,000, 15,000 feet before you get to the floor, and then you're drilling down into the floor another 10 or whatever thousand feet into the rock to find the gas that you want. Not everybody has that type of technology. But, Mr. Speaker, sir, this is the journey upon which we are going to embark. So I use that as example number one of a new area of economic opportunity that could not happen if we did not have these pieces of legislation. So when people talk about diversifying the economy, Mr. Speaker, sir, let them understand that these are stepping stones along the way to getting us now to unleash a potential that we know exists across this part of the Caribbean. And I mean, without going into the seismic survey data, I ain't gonna bore the house with that. Just let's look around this region. Venezuela, got plenty. Trinidad, next door, plenty. Next door, Guyana, plenty. Down the road, Suriname, plenty. So it stands to reason, Mr. Speaker, sir, that unless something radically wrong somewhere, there got to be some in this neck of the woods as well. But obviously, the scientific surveys is what we are dealing with, and as I said, we are very optimistic about them and the way they are looking. Mr. Speaker, sir, there's another area of activity which lies on the cusp of our ability, and that is offshore wind energy. Because, sir, we are now doing, and the International Finance Corporation, which is helping us to structure the transaction at Lambert's in St. Lucie, has indicated to us that the very best practice is to begin on land. Let us understand how wind energy works, because it is a subject area in and of itself, with separate tariff setting approaches, separate technologies, sir, and we got to, you creep before you walk. We are doing the investment at scale, at utility scale, at Lambert's, at utility scale. Those who know Barbados know that there is 1 megawatt already in Guinea in St. John, but that is not a utility scale investment. And so therefore, Mr. Speaker, sir, when we get to 35, 50 megawatts at Lambert's, after that, then we will be in a position now to look into the ocean. And again, we have done the studies and we know where the wind zones are. So the question would then be attracting the investment to use that ocean space delineated in the Marine Spatial Plan that I've talked to you about, Mr. Speaker, sir, facilitated by the legislation that we are now debating, Mr. Speaker, sir, in order to have the economic thrust and impetus to take us for future investments in the tune of billions of dollars, with a B, into the ocean space, sir, for the generation of energy via offshore wind. Mr. Speaker, sir, this cabinet has not talked a lot about it, but we have done the bathymetric studies with a company by the name of Baird. The honourable members, sir, with sectoral responsibility believe that the oversight minister does not follow them. We have done the bathymetric studies, Mr. Speaker, sir, and we know that there are now at least 2, if not 3 possible sites for offshore islands to be realistically sources of investment for this country. Realistically. And we understand now the ocean depths. We have mapped the ocean floor, Mr. Speaker, sir. We understand the tidal flows. We understand, Mr. Speaker, sir, what would be the risk environmentally, or where there would be weakest, where there would be greatest. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, sir, these things don't happen overnight. It takes time. I hear people talk. To give you an example, we talk about wind energy. Mr. Speaker, sir, you can't have a wind study in less than a year, because ideally, sir, you have to have a 2-year period where you have the mast up there to monitor the flow of the wind over that period of time. You can try to expedite it and do it in a year, but you can't. This is not fast food business. And so therefore, when you're building out new sectors of the economy, and when we talk about a new and innovative approach to what the future of tourism would be like, let us be real about the constraints of 166 square miles of Barbados. There's no green field anymore. There's no new place where you can easily have a brand new investment of scale, where you can have a brand new investment that will attract substantial amounts of dollars and employment, Mr. Speaker, sir, over the long term at scale in this little island, because the most attractive parts coastally are already taken. And, sir, we also have to balance the ecology and so on of the country so that even inland tourism is something, sir, that has now to compete against crucial issues like agriculture, crucial issues like housing, and several other sectoral interests as well. So that is why the offshore, that 425 times, that space 425 times the size of terrestrial Barbados becomes vitally important. And the studies now indicate to us where it is possible to make the kind of investment that we would like to see being made on offshore islands off of Barbados that will facilitate easy access to the mainland and easy access, Mr. Speaker, sir, to a brand new feature of recreation and tourism for Barbadian people to enjoy, while at the same time we are making ourselves even more appealing to the large and highly competitive tourism market that is out there. Well, Mr. Speaker, sir, there's obviously limited time. I want to speak very briefly to another matter that arises out of this legislation, and that is something that is called biological diversity in areas beyond the national jurisdiction. And, sir, that has been the hard work of the member who served previously as the Minister of Environment and is now Minister of People Empowerment. And, Mr. Speaker, sir, I had the privilege of signing the treaty, I believe it was in 2023, at the United Nations, where Barbados was one of the first countries, certainly the first small island developing state, to sign on to it. And what is it about, Mr. Speaker, sir? This legislation is, again, supporting the efforts that we have made in that regard by protecting us, sir, against overfishing, protecting us, sir, against pollution of our maritime space, ensuring, sir, that we have access to scientific expertise and knowledge transfer. Overfishing, Mr. Speaker, sir, will cripple the fishing sector of this country. It is something that we know long. We have, from little boys, talked about it with regard to the sea eggs. We knew that there was a sea egg season. And people, sir, laugh and skin the teeth at that and make sport and go and harvest the little sea eggs that ain't grown fully yet. Out of season, take them up. And now, Mr. Speaker, sir, where is the sea egg season in Barbados? When is it? When is it, sir? And that will be the fate of every species of fish if we do not have the legislative intervention to protect the sector in the way that this government is moving to protect the sector. And again, that is one of the real living reasons why this legislation is important. And Mr. Speaker, sir, I talked about marine pollution. We cannot continue to have a set of circumstances where, from the largest of vessels to the very smallest, especially in circumstances where we want to invest in new sectors that have been known from time to have environmental catastrophe, we, sir, must make sure that we have the most robust form of protection against pollution in the maritime space. And then, Mr. Speaker, sir, similarly, small island developing states will not easily throw up on every street corner or at every bus stop people who have the scientific knowledge, the technical expertise, sir, to do the kind of work and give the kind of advice to government and to potential investors, sir, in the interest of protecting this country and promoting its opportunities economically. They are persons who have to be highly skilled and highly trained, and if we don't necessarily have the cadre, the numbers, the numerical strength of those numbers, sir, then legislation of this type enables us to have the technological transfer with countries that have that. And I will not belabor that point any further, because if my friend, the Honourable Member for Christchurch West Central, wishes to speak, I know without any doubt that he will be speaking on that matter. And so, Mr. Speaker, sir, it brings me to the last issue I wanted to touch on, and it was the question raised. I noted the joy in the voice of the Honourable Member who piloted this bill when he talked about the synergy between the maritime sector and space. S-P-A-C-E, as in the outer realms, sir, of the hemisphere. Not the hemisphere, of the, what was it? Hydrosphere. Now, Mr. Speaker, sir, we have to be very real. You know, people will poo-poo the idea that Barbados could be involved in space research. Let us remember 1962. Let us remember a scientist by the name of Dr. Jerry Bull, G-E-R-R-Y-B-U-L-L. And Mr. Speaker, sir, Dr. Bull did some research here, sir, on a 16-inch naval cannon, which came to be known as the harp gun. The remnants of the harp gun are still to be found at Paragon, Mr. Speaker, sir, behind the Paragon headquarters of the Paragon base of the Defense Force. And those members who served in cadets or anything of that nature, sir, will have had to run past them all mornings, as certainly I did very, very frequently, so you know where it is. And Mr. Speaker, sir, that gun would have shot missiles 112 miles to the edge of outer space in 1962. So that we, sir, have had a long history of connectivity between this little rock and that type of research. Now, unfortunately, the history is sordid because Dr. Bull, a good friend of the then Prime Minister, or Premier of Barbados, subsequent Prime Minister, the Right Excellent Eric Barra, he, sir, got himself in confusion with using that research in order to sell illegal arms against a United Nations embargo, and those arms were sold to the apartheid nation of South Africa. So that when people over there like to talk about poor black people, what they should also talk about is their sordid history with regard to the way in which that government found itself in partnership with people who did terrible things against the poorest of black people and the most struggling and vulnerable in that apartheid regime in South Africa. But that's not what I come here to talk about. What I come here to talk about, Mr. Speaker, sir, is the opportunity for the future. And that this legislation we are talking about today, Mr. Speaker, sir, embraces and anticipates further types of investment that not, and again, let us be very clear, that should not again be done without the proper safeguards and guardrails to look out for the interests of the ordinary Barbadian. The member who sits to my left, the learned Attorney General of Barbados, serves a constituency known as Christchurch East, where everybody who is over the age of 60 will tell you, if they live in Christchurch East, that they had experience of the house. If the house was a wall house, its foundations, sir, in some cases cracked, the windows shattered. All of that was the fallout of the use of the harp gun. And there is nobody who could tell you in Christchurch East that they were compensated by the government of Barbados either. That was part of the sordid history of the Democratic Labour Party of the day. I know a lot of honourable members may not be familiar with it, but I use the opportunity so that Hansard, the record, the eternal record of the Parliament of Barbados, will be able to have it recorded so that folks can say at subsequent years, behold, look what the Dems had done. Now, Mr. Speaker, sir, opportunity presents itself, therefore, for us to be able to use this legislation to harness partnerships with universities around the world, sir, and leading research agencies around the world, so that Barbados, which is obviously uniquely and strategically positioned, and I think the Honourable Minister of Tourism gave us the coordinates. There was a reason why they chose Barbados, because of our location geographically. That is not going to change. And so the relevance of the country, sir, for this type of research will continue. But we got to position ourselves as we must protect our people And that government did not do. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, so we also have to make sure that we bring people who are worthwhile to be brought to Barbados to do business with, as that government did not do. But, Mr. Speaker, sir, the opportunity is something that we cannot let go of begging. And so I say those things, sir, because I feel as Minister responsible for the productive sector, Senior Minister responsible for the productive sector of this country, it is necessary for us to understand that there is a broad scope of opportunity in that maritime space. And I have not spoken exhaustively to the maritime space potential because, again, there's much more we can do in fishing. There's much more we can do in the cruise tourism sector. There's much more, Mr. Speaker, that can be done. But the point is that these are new areas of economic opportunity, which not only have the potential of employing our people, but have the potential of earning tremendous amounts of foreign exchange, attracting tremendous amounts of investment. And if you look at some of these sectors, sir, I want to say to you, they are, in the context of the oil and gas sector, highly likely to be overtaking anything that we could earn in tourism. If you're looking, Mr. Speaker, sir...
Your member has 2 more minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. If you look, sir, at the offshore wind sector, same thing. If, Mr. Speaker, sir, you were prepared to recognize that the areas beyond national jurisdiction, sir, where you are talking, therefore, about the opportunity to take minerals from the ocean floor. Some of those minerals, sir, are the very things that are now driving the global economy. And what we must be able to do, sir, is to be able to get there, to collect or harvest in an environmentally safe and sensible way, and locate ourselves as part of that chain of production that is earning so much for so many other countries. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, sir, again, creating a door of opportunity economically for Barbados. So as I said at the beginning, I am thrilled to be part of a government which at this time has brought legislative infrastructure such as this that will facilitate transformation of an economic nature, facilitate an impetus towards growth and development, the likes of which, sir, we have not seen in recent decades. Mr. Speaker, sir, help us turn that chapter towards being less reliant solely on the tourism and related sectors, but, sir, to be able to now branch off into several new areas of economic activity and therefore capture the fullest possible potential of the people of this country. I'm obliged to you, sir.
Honourable Member St. Peter.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I rise to contribute to this debate, cognate debate on the Maritime Areas Jurisdiction and Rights Bill, as well as the Seafarers Bill. And I rise to do that from a particular perspective. Now, I have the honor to be the Member of Parliament for St. Peter, and since people are no longer going to Sunday school, I may need to say that Peter was a fisherman in the Bible, and one of the reasons that the constituency, the parish, is so named is because it is named after someone who was associated with the sea. I am also representing a constituency in Barbados that has 2 coasts, an East Coast and a West Coast. I'm also representing a constituency that has what I boldly say is the only authentic fishing village in Barbados at 6 Miles. Authentic fishing village, not the only place where fish are caught. I'm talking about a village that is a fishing village, not a constructed one. Authentic fishing village where all of the activity is centered around the sea. And I'm also representing a constituency with a coastal town that is not unique, but we do have a coastal town that has been known for centuries as a place, at least for 2 centuries, as a place where significant sea trade took place. And that is the reason why Speightstown got the name or the moniker of Little Bristol. because of trade by sea. I'm also representing, Mr. Speaker, a constituency where one of the major activities, and actually an industry, arose at the turn of the last century, which was whaling. So there's lots related to the sea that causes me to want to intervene in this debate and to say from the outset that I'm happy to be able to lend my voice, but also my support to these two bills. Now, I did speak when we spoke some time ago on other areas of maritime legislation. But I think I ought to say that the Maritime Area Bill, Maritime Areas Jurisdiction and Rights Bill, is Barbados' contribution to reinforcing and understanding that even at sea, the rule of law must be enforced. It is important to say that, especially now, when oil prices are elevated, when straits and seas and the news surrounding those straits and seas remind us of what we heard about growing up about Sir Francis Drake, about the gentleman at Sam Lawrence is what. Mr. Speaker, this piece of legislation is important, coming as it does from a very small country. But we've always been known to stand up for principle, stand up for right. And I think it is important that we say not just to this chamber and not just to this country, but that we use this opportunity to say to the world that even on the high seas, there must be rule of law. You cannot be blowing up people on the high seas. You cannot be restricting traffic on the high seas. And we are saying this not to agitate anybody, not to irritate anybody, but because a small state can only properly survive in a situation where there's a rule of law. That is how small people, small countries, vulnerable groups, that is how we survive rule of law. And this bill, the Maritime Areas Jurisdiction and Rights Bill, is Barbados' contribution at this very appropriate time to say to the world, we must have rule of law. It cannot be anything goes. It cannot be just that the strongest survive. We must operate, if we believe that we are in some civilized era, we must operate according to the rule of law. Now, Mr. Speaker, you would not be surprised if my focus in this debate, though, relates to the seafarers legislation. This bill, all 300 plus pages, and I said to the officer who drafted the instructions and who sometimes, as my predecessor as Member of Parliament would say, sometimes humbugged me to make sure that comments were received. Significant work went into this, and I think we ought to recognize and commend. I commend the officer. I also commend her minister at the time, the Honourable Member for St. Michael's South, who did significant work to move this matter forward. Now, at this point, I should say that seafaring, working in that sector, offers significant opportunities for Barbadians. But, Mr. Speaker, that is not new. And I remember when the Honourable Member for St. Michael South was the minister responsible, we always joked that it was very interesting that the Member of Parliament for a place that produced so many seafarers was actually involved in driving this matter from the policy level. Because, as I said, Mr. Speaker, this is not new. Barbadians over many decades have earned decent livings through work in the maritime sector. Now, this bill, as the Honourable Member for St. Michael West Central indicated, speaks to seafarers as opposed to fishers. Now, we call them fishermen, fisherwomen, whatever, but the accepted term is fishers. This speaks to seafarers, not those who go out to fish and come back in. Barbadians over the years have found work with lines carrying cargo, ships, shipping lines carrying cargo. Barbadians over the years have found opportunities with cruise ships. And these are all workers in the maritime space. I can tell you, Mr. Speaker, that Barbadians, as we speak, are employed with cruise lines. I can tell you, Mr. Speaker, that just 2 weeks ago, the ministry that I have the honor to lead conducted in association with Disney Cruise Lines a session to sensitize Barbadians as to the opportunities that are available on cruise ships, particularly the Disney cruise ships. But those who we have working right now in the cruise area are not on the Disney cruise ships. I think they're on Royal Caribbean. I stand to be corrected on that. But it is a line other than the Disney cruise line. So there are those opportunities on cruise lines, but there continue to be opportunities on cargo ships. Those persons who we interact with as we move around in our constituencies, in our parishes, in this country, Barbados, we always come across people who said they used to go to sea. And that is what I grew up hearing. There were people in Rosehill, there were people in Spitestown and Malina, people in Six Mains, who said, yeah, my father used to go to sea. And when those people went to sea, they were a little bit, their children particularly, were a little bit ahead of most people. Because the men, and they were particularly men then, when they went to certain ports, there were certain things they could buy and bring back for their children. And not that the children showed off, but we know how children are. They have things that some of us didn't have. Because in St. Peter, the fanciest things we could get were from Elmer's. And Elmer's was the base supermarket. That was when we went to a supermarket as opposed to a shop. But people in Barbados have benefited over the years, over the decades, from working online. So I couch my remarks, my contribution, within the understanding that there have been opportunities in the past. Barbadians have benefited in the past from being seafarers, and that these opportunities continue to today, and they will continue after today. Now, the Honourable Member for St. Michael West Central spoke to the fact that one contemporary situation and one situation from the recent past has highlighted this matter of working on cruise ships. He spoke to what happened during the pandemic. Barbados is in a unique position because during the pandemic, close to the beginning of the pandemic, when ports closed to ships, when there were dozens of ships anchored off the west coast of the United States, when there were cruise ships in Caribbean waters, because this was in the Caribbean cruise season, in the winter cruise season, Barbados made a decision that we would do all that we could to ensure that those persons who were working on those ships did not feel totally abandoned. we allowed cruise ships to come to our waters, and we facilitated them with respect to making sure that those who were on board still had access to some level of health care, could still replenish their food stocks, replenish their water stocks. In other words, Mr. Speaker, we approach seafarers in 2020 recognizing that they were people, that they were human beings, that they were not pariahs, and that even a pandemic that had the entire world in fear, not even a pandemic, should stop us from helping to make sure that there was decent work conditions for those who had committed themselves to moving product and to moving people from one place to another. The Honourable Member also spoke about what is happening now in the Strait of Hormuz, where there are people on ships who are stuck because big powers are fighting. Now, I'm not criticizing big powers. I am saying that people who work on ships must be recognized as human beings and that certain rights must be protected. These are people who put themselves to some degree at a level of risk by traversing the high seas. You know, you can't pull into a gas station. You can't pull someplace and stop off. And you're on the high seas. And so the matter of decent work for those who work on ships is important to Barbados. As I said, we demonstrated it during the pandemic, and we see it happening again today. The matter of workers, seafarers, having to endure some risks that will cause them some level of trepidation. Now, the bill, the Seafarers Bill that we are speaking to today, have a number of provisions that I, as Minister responsible for Labour, am very proud about. The first one is that the Maritime Labour Convention 2006, we call it in ILO circles MLC 2006. This bill is very clear to indicate that the Maritime Labour Convention 2006 will have the force of law. I am not sure how many other countries in the world have this provision in any of their legislation. I have not done the research, but based on everything that I hear, I do not believe that there are many. This bill provides that that convention has the force of law. And so, well, I should qualify that. It has the force of law for Barbados flagged vessels. That's an important qualifier to make because we don't have jurisdiction over everybody, but we do have over those ships that carry our flag, or that I should say legitimately carry our flag. Now, Mr. Speaker, there is also a provision in this bill that speaks to the prohibition for non-convention compliant ships. So Barbados cannot associate its flag with ships that do not comply with the provisions of the Maritime Labour Convention. And that this is stated in these two different clauses says to the world, says to workers who are either from Barbados working on ships or working on Barbados flagged ships, it says to them that this country, this small country, is interested in promoting decent work on ships, decent work for seafarers who are connected to our country. There is in the bill as well the matter of the inspectorate. And we can imagine that inspecting a ship is not the same as inspecting a factory or a supermarket in Barbados. But the bill speaks to a construct that has been developed It will be led by the ministry responsible for maritime affairs. It will also include the ministry responsible for labor. And these two ministries, one of which I lead, these two ministries will work together to make sure that the inspectorate is adequate, that it has the capacity, and I really like the work done in putting this together because it reflected an understanding that this could not take place in a siloed way. So we're talking about seafarers and their protection. Ordinarily, you would think labor and maybe the Ministry of Labor. This, however, sits with the ministry responsible for maritime affairs. The construction of it ought to be a lesson for other ministries and public officers. That Barbados is a single country. And when we are crafting our legislation, when we are working through how we will address certain things, that collaboration is important, and collaboration allows us to be more effective. And so both the ministry responsible for maritime affairs and the ministry responsible for labor will be involved in the inspectorate, and that is because much of the technical expertise for inspections lay within the ministry responsible for labor. Now, I also want to highlight, Mr. Speaker, that this bill includes some provisions that support not just the Maritime Labour Convention, but those conventions that we consider fundamental to workers' rights and fundamental to decent work. So that, for example, in this bill, Mr. Speaker, I think at section 35, we will see mention of freedom of association. And that was spoken to by some who went before me. There's also the provision against forced or compulsory labor. There's also a provision against child labor. And there's also a provision against discrimination in work. And that is also manifested when we speak to the gender equality, which is found in a later clause, in a later section. But those four that I spoke to you about are considered to be fundamental to the creation of decent jobs and decent work. And so we say, as a country, to those ships carrying our flag, and to those ships where Barbadian workers are engaged that may not be carrying our flag, that we are committed, that we are strongly committed to decent work and to the protection of workers so that our workers can be productive. Because our workers will not be productive if they are not protected. This bill, Mr. Speaker, also speaks to, addresses an area that is of much concern to my ministry, and that is in the area of occupational safety and health. It speaks to, we call it OSH, occupational safety and health, as it relates to workers who are on ships. Now, we can understand, as was shared earlier, a worker on a ship, a seafarer, is both at home and at work in the same geographical space. Now, that in itself presents significant challenges. And so it is necessary, as this bill does, to ensure that we speak directly and clearly to the matter of occupational safety and health for those who work on ships, those who we consider to be seafarers. There is also, along with the matter of occupational safety and health, the mandating of medical examinations. And, Mr. Speaker, you will recognize, or you may have recognized, that many of the provisions of this bill mirror the work that this Barbados Labour Party in government has been doing since it came into office almost 8 years ago. So when I speak to you, for example, of discrimination in work, that was one of our first pieces of legislation on coming into office, the prevention of discrimination. When I speak to you, Mr. Speaker, about occupational safety and health, you may recall that this government set out all the regulations. There was a SHAW Act, Safety and Health at Work Act, for a number of years without any regulations. We brought regulations to this Honourable Chamber, and we have set those regulations for the Occupational Safety and Health, well, the Safety and Health at Work Act. We have, Mr. Speaker, been doing a lot of groundwork. So, for example, in this bill, you heard the honourable member who led speak to maternity and paternity leave. I will tell you that the officer who he referred to and who I refer to, we had discussions on maternity and paternity leave with respect to this bill even before we drafted a cabinet paper, a final cabinet paper for extended maternity leave and paternity leave more generally, so that in the preparation of this bill, we had gone ahead of where we were generally as a country. I know that this was some of the work of the officer dealing with it. I also know that the minister responsible for the policy, then as he does now, considers himself a social minister in some other kind of a ministry. And he was a social minister in a maritime ministry. But now he's a social minister in an infrastructure ministry, but still a social minister. And so things like maternity leave and paternity leave, we discussed, we made sure were a part of this bill. But when I say we, I'm talking about the ministry took the lead, but our comments were in full support. And I could probably say that the inclusion here helped to push us in the Ministry of Labour a bit, so that we have this bill which speaks to an extended maternity leave, it speaks to paternity leave, and it goes a little further than the national situation because it does not impose a threshold, at least not an upper threshold, not in the same way that ours could be interpreted to do, but it recognizes that persons at sea are also in a slightly different situation to those of us who are working terrestrially. So that other provisions such as minimum age, 18 years old, exceptions only in very specific cases. What happens to workers between 18 and 21? Between 18 and 21, there have to be certain breaks after, for example, I think 15 minutes after 2 hours of work, and certain stipulations that recognize that work as a seafarer is not ordinary work. It is demanding work, and so it requires some additional safeguards. And that is why a bill that speaks to seafarers could end up being 330 pages long, because working on the high seas is different, as we would say home, a different kind of work. It is heavy work, strong work, strenuous work. No night work for people under the age of 21. I was speaking earlier about the matter of medical examinations. And these medical examinations are, you must have an examination at the beginning, but every 2 years. And this mirrors to some degree what we have done, Mr. Speaker, with respect to those who work in petrol stations. Also recognized to be a different kind of work. You're pumping gas, I've said that in this honorable chamber before, you're inhaling fumes, almost for an entire 8-hour shift. And so it is understood that in order to protect that worker, medical tests are necessary. There's a long section of the various tests that seafarers are to undergo. But again, like I said, it reflects the fact that in our regulations that spoke to occupational safety and health, as a government, we made sure that those who work in petrol stations are entitled to a full medical examination every year at no cost to them. That is what we have done as a government with respect to workers at petrol stations, and that is similar to what is included here for seafarers. Medical exams at the beginning and then every 2 years. Now, there's something that I want to say, that I have to say before I take my seat. There's a section that speaks to seafarers' identity documents. But the component of that clause that I want to emphasize is that you cannot get those documents, the documents that speak to your authenticity, without having first registered for national insurance with the National Insurance and Social Security Service under the National Insurance Scheme. There is also a provision for ensuring that Social Security contributions are maintained for Barbadians working on ships and for Barbadians working on ships and on flagged vessels, so that the matter of making sure that social protection is in place, social protection meaning Social Security in this context, that is included as well in this bill. And I say, Mr. Speaker, that is one of the great provisions, so that we do not have situations as we had in the past where some of our forebears went to sea, earned decent money at sea, were able to raise children, build houses, but sometimes in their toilet years did not have that Social Security income. This bill speaks to righting that wrong, if we may call it that, or closing that gap, sorting out what the lawyers sometimes call a lacuna, so that the matter of making sure that our seafarers, if they are to get those documents, are registered and compliant with Social Security, the National Insurance Scheme, that is written in, built in to this piece of legislation. The legislation also speaks to collective bargaining. It speaks to the protection of wages. It is really, Mr. Speaker, a very good bill as it relates to worker protection. It is a bill that allows a worker, a Barbadian worker in the seafaring industry, to be able to work understanding that his or her country is committed to decent work and committed to making sure that their conditions can be considered decent. That allows them to be productive. That allows them to contribute to the business, to the company that they're working for. It allows them to maximize their input and to be considered really top-class workers, as we know Barbadians can be. The final thing I want to speak to, and it causes me to circle back a little bit to what happened during COVID, what is happening now in the Middle East, particularly in the Gulf of Oman, Strait of Hormuz, in that area, the matter of repatriation. During COVID, many seafarers were left stranded on the high seas. People died by suicide. Working on land, you can leave your house, you can go in your backyard, you can get some fresh air, you can go to a park somewhere. There are things you can do. You can have contact with family, with friends, when you're on a ship in the middle of an ocean, and it does not have to even to be the middle of an ocean, you could be off a coast, but disconnected totally from the land. It puts you in a different mental space. And so the matter of repatriation, and this is in one of the later provisions, I think section 146, somewhere around there, and following on. This matter of repatriation is an important one. The provision in this bill allows us not necessarily to do the impossible, because if a person is stranded on a ship somewhere, it may not be possible to send somebody for them in a speedboat. And in the Caribbean, in recent times, that may not even be a wise thing, because you may not be asked what you're doing with the speedboat. But once you're in a speedboat, then you may get a video online that shows an explosion. But what the provision does do is that it signals to those who employ our people that we are not messing around with this. If you look at some of the penalties for not adhering to the provisions of the bill, you will see some numbers that go up in 300,000 and 700,000, numbers that I only see on paper. But it signals that we are serious and that we are prepared to enforce the rights of our workers. And so, Mr. Speaker, I believe, even as we thought that that kind of situation we had gone past after we left COVID, the current situation tells us that this bill is right on time. It is still timely, even though between 2020 and now, we had not had situations or major situations where people were stranded on ships. The fact that we are including the need, necessity, obligation to repatriate workers says that we respect our workers, that we value their labor, that we value their contribution, that we recognize peculiar circumstances, such as the circumstances that would be if you are working on a ship, and that we are prepared to use the law to ensure that our workers are not mistreated. And so, Mr. Speaker, it is really my honor to be able to support these two bills that we are addressing in cognate debate, the Maritime Areas Jurisdiction and Rights Bill, but more particularly the Seafarers Bill. I think it is a modern piece of legislation. When it becomes legislation, it will be a modern piece of legislation. I believe that it speaks very directly to what my ministry understands as the twin sides of the coin, protection and production. I believe, Mr. Speaker, and I'm convinced that it speaks to the idea of decent work and that it recognizes the humanity of our people. It recognizes that our people will want to take the opportunities that exist in working on cruise lines or cargo vessels, and that we are able to confidently say to these people, our people, you can go ahead and take the job. Our legislative framework stands behind you. Our legislative framework is there to protect you, and we will make sure that the inspections are done, that all the commitments that we have made in these 300 pages, we will stand by, because we believe in developing and protecting our people. Mr. Speaker, I'm obliged to you.
Honourable Member Christchurch West Central.
Mr. Speaker, allow me, please, to start by thanking those two persons who would have preceded me. I acceded to their demand to speak before me because only 2 weeks ago I brought legislation which spoke to the care and protection and respect for the elderly. And based on the fact that those two persons are a little older than myself, I think that it was only fair and the respectful thing to do, but allow them and acquiesce to their demand. But Mr. Speaker, equally, I want to also thank another gentleman who may be a little older too, the guy who occupies the good constituency of St. Michael West Central, a guy who I have a lot of respect for, who piloted this legislation, and I want to say to him, job well done. I want to start, Mr. Speaker, by recognizing the importance of this legislation, the importance as it relates to how we build out and protect our maritime space, how we build out and protect that which is up to sometimes 425 times the size of our biosphere, our land area. And to say to the minister that the legislation that he has been inundating this honorable chamber with since he took up office, I want to say to him that we are thankful for the efforts and the efforts of your ministry, those officers who work assiduously to ensure that we recognize that that space, which is 430 times the size of our land space, can equally bring 430 more benefits to this country. I want to say, Mr. Speaker, that the center of my conversation will be dealing with three aspects of this legislation. Firstly, I want to look at the space that we are talking about and the way how those spaces are demarcated for the full benefits of not only Barbadians, but those who operate in our maritime waters and our boundaries. And then to look at the environmental impacts that would ensure that we have the legislation in place to protect. Of course, Mr. Speaker, and lastly, which is very important to my heart, our biological diversity beyond our national jurisdiction. Mr. Speaker, the legislation would have spoken to our contiguous zone, that zone which is about 24 nautical miles or so above our terrestrial space, the zone which he said in legislation must be protected, that what happens in terms of the international policy framework, what happens in terms of trade, that space must come and collate itself in a special way with the legislation so that we can protect and ensure that we build out that particular area. Our EEZ, alluded to over the years, 200 nautical miles within our boundaries. And it speaks to an area where we have said in previous legislation, again, must be protected in terms of environmental, marine, and obviously the protection from trade, especially what we would call illegal or inadvertent trade. Mr. Speaker, and lastly, the continental shelf, that drop-off area, which would be far beyond what we see in terms of our visual scope as the horizontal line. Those areas, Mr. Speaker, how this legislation impacts those areas is a very important part of the discussion and the discussion going forward, because we have said as a government, and the legislation buttress that which we have alluded to in terms of ensuring that these three areas are protected for what they are worth, and so that not only Barbadians but every single person across the dimension can benefit and respect those particular areas. Mr. Speaker, we would have heard the Member of Parliament for St. James Central when he elucidated about the Marine Spatial Plan and the fact that with our debt for nature swap, that landmark swap that give us the financial elbow room and the wherewithal to be able to advance a marine spatial plan with about $15 million US over a 5 to 7 year period. A plan which seeks to demarcate our ocean, the 200 nautical miles, the exclusive economic zone, into areas for full benefit. You would have heard the benefits as it relates to marine protective areas, artisanal fishing areas, recreational areas, areas that would look for energy and energy conservation, areas where we have said in more than one voice that there must be protection from our polymetallic nodules under the bottom of the ocean or seabed. And lastly, which is very dear to my heart, our biodiversity. I want to be the first to admit today that we have started the work and we have partnered with the University of Ireland, Mr. Speaker, sir, where up to last year, we had a ship here in the southwestern area of our country looking at the high protective biodiversity and the medium protective biodiversity, because we recognize that in order to combat the vagaries of climate change, our fight to preserve the biodiversity must be on all cylinders. We recognize it, we understand it, and we appreciate it. The fact that only a couple of years earlier, I brought a National Biological Strategic Action Plan to this Parliament, which spoke to the fact that recognizing our Sustainable Development Goal 14, life under the ocean, or life in the ocean as it relates to protection, that biodiversity must become an equal part of the conversation. And we have said that we will start with that biodiversity, which is high risk, the highly protected biodiversity, and our medium biodiversity. I want to say today, Mr. Speaker, that with the right trust, and I assure the Minister, and now the person who takes over the Ministry of Environment, will combine their efforts to ensure that biodiversity becomes on the forefront of discussions, and that our commitment to preserve at least 12% by the ocean, that commitment is respected, and we are able to realize that commitment over the next couple of years. Mr. Speaker, the importance of biodiversity must never be underestimated. And I want to take the opportunity also to thank Juliette Barbroilly and those persons who work in the international sphere for getting us to the stage where we became signatory to the biological conversation beyond our national jurisdiction. That area where the world recognized 93.3% of the ocean that is unclaimed. We recognize as a world, Barbados, small country, but we are part of that discussion, that out of this 93.3% of that unclaimed ocean, that we can deliver an additional 50% of biodiversity across the world. About in the year 2050, about 50% more of our biodiversity is untapped and can be found in waters outside of national jurisdictions. That is what we say. And equally, the world signed on to the agreement in 2025 last year, around, I should think it was November or so. And only January this year, it came into force because we had more than 60 signatories needed. I think we have about 120 something or so countries thus far which signed on to the agreement. And I'm saying that with the continual trust and the ability to highlight the importance of our biodiversity, I suspect that when we have our next international meeting, that we will have over 150 countries being signatory to this very important convention. Mr. Speaker, the importance of biodiversity, you've heard it that since the industrial era, or about over 200 years ago, that the world over has lost around 500 or so species of animals. Same amount of plants, over 500 species. Insects, the amount of insects threatened as they speak or on the endangered list is over 1 million. These are things that we should not take for granted. And to have governments across and nations across the world being laser focused in terms of protecting that which will cause the ultimate survival of this world is something that we can all applaud. And I am happy that Barbados is a part of this trust, this important trust. And going further into our marine space, I can say to you without a doubt that scientists have recorded so far a loss of about 152 species of marine life in our territorial waters over the last 30, 40 years or so. This is a damning realization, and this is something that we have to bring to an abrupt end as soon as possible. And that's why the importance of having this type of legislation, one that encompasses the trust of improving our biodiversity. Mr. Speaker, you were pretty well aware of, I'm sure, the fact that the numbers for our parts, fish, unfortunately, is being threatened. And we have now to look, because there's those simple things like our fish species that make our marine environment vibrant and give it the opportunity to do that which it should be doing in terms of providing the carbon sink and all those things that scientists would like it to provide. Food, how we are able to generate food, how the world over is able to reduce its heat because of a vibrant marine or hydrosphere, how these things impact the world. This is the type of conversation, Mr. Speaker, that Barbados is involved in. And I want to say to you, Mr. Speaker, that the interest and emphasis on protecting that parrotfish is a vital and important part of our marine ecosystem. The world knows, and it is well documented, that these fish are responsible for producing sand on our beaches. This species of fish, Mr. Speaker, sir, is doing that which we, as mankind, as hard as we try, can't do in a natural way. And so the importance of protecting them, Mr. Speaker, I am saying that the importance is as important as protecting the air we breathe, because the species protection will very well determine if this country survives the test of time or if we are hamstrung to the vagaries of climate change and natural disasters as we know it. Mr. Speaker, you would have heard the Member of Parliament for St. James also alluded to the fact that we have to protect our ocean seabed because there are polymetallic nodules, certain heavy metals that are integral for the protection of our seabed. And in the same way that we are saying that biodiversity must be preserved, equally, we are saying that there must be a level of consciousness associated with the way how we treat to our seabed. That is why we are doing all the studies, the bathymetric studies that the Member of Parliament of St. James spoke about earlier. The studies as it relates to what is involved in our marine space and how we treat to those things that are important, are an important cog of our marine ecosystem. And I'm saying that the polymetallic nodules, the manganese, cobalt, zinc, those things that we are now using in the new technologies, the batteries, the electric cars, the computers, that how we are able to protect those things will pretty much determine our future. So this legislation that speaks to the regulation of even what happens in our ocean floor is very important legislation, because we must be able to protect those polymetallic nodules as well, and to say to the world that they have an important function and role. These things in the ocean, they come by happenstance. They were created for a specific purpose, And so we must be able to respect and treat to these things in a manner that fits into the marine ecosystem. And I want to say that research is there to show that the sediments of these nodules are able to attract carbon dioxide in a special way. You've heard about ocean acidification. Reason being is the excessive carbon dioxide that is sequestered by the ocean and acidifies it. If you are having these things that create sediments to absorb that which is harmful to us, then you can see, Mr. Speaker, the importance of such. They're able to form structures on the bottom of the ocean. The ocean, 30,000, 35,000 feet sometimes below what we will see with our eyes or our naked eyes, is soft mud, Mr. Speaker, sir. And when you're looking at habitats, we have certain species of lobster and animals living deep under the ocean, sand sharks, etc., that live and are able to survive some interesting temperatures. When you have these things, Mr. Speaker, at the bottom of the ocean protecting and creating those habitats, this legislation is saying, hey, look, you have to come through us. You have to have discussions. There must be a scientific approval. There must be the bathymetric studies that the Member of Parliament of St. James Central spoke to. There must be critical scientific analysis before we give you the go-ahead. And recognizing, of course, that Barbados is rich in terms of our reefs and our biodiversity, that we must be able to protect our intellectual property rights. And that is where the legislation is here. The lawyers would say, as yourself, Mr. Speaker, and I see you nodding, that there must be temporal scope. I may not understand, because I'm not as lettered in law like yourself, but temporal scope, as far as I understand, means that there must be recourse, legal recourse, if persons tend to do things that they're not supposed to do within the corridors of our seabed. I am saying to you, Mr. Speaker, this is important legislation that seeks to bring order. You would have heard earlier the Member of Parliament for St. Michael's West Central. Sometimes they almost call it Christchurch West Central because he operates in the envelopes of St. Michael. I operate in the fulcrum of Christchurch. So we are mirroring in some way or the other. Some people say we are short together, and we went to the same alma mater, where we went to school at the same school that says as its axiom, fear God, think clean, and aim high. And I'm sure that he has aimed to the stars and to the bottom of the ocean to bring this legislation here. Mr. Speaker, I want to say that the protection of the environment, the next thing I didn't want to go on to, we brought legislation here which spoke to the fact that the way how ships treat to our environment must collide with our legislation. Where we are talking about boats and ships which are allowed to port in our waters. We talk about the ballast water and the way how it should be treated, where it could be discharged, and how it could be discharged, because we recognize that there are a lot of marine-related issues with even the ships and the ballast water, and how they are able to discharge of garbage and other things that would be considered waste. Mr. Speaker, our Environmental Protection Department works closely with our port to ensure that waste and other products that are allowed to be discharged, that they follow the international guidelines, because we take environmental protection of our marine environment very seriously. And it's not only the protection of the marine environment in terms of chemical and waste pollution, but we look at also how we can prevent migratory species from entering our waters, because that, again, speaks to the micromanagement and the important management of our marine environment, which is very important to the survival of our marine space. We have said that in previous legislation that mariculture must be allowed to be a vibrant and important part of anything we do in the sea. And this legislation, because it speaks to the demarcations and the marine spatial plan, allows for areas that we can use to build up the agriculture industry for not only our locals, but allow much needed for exchange. And the Minister of Labour will also say to me that it gives Barbadians the opportunity to be part of a new dynamic labour market, the mariculture space. Mr. Speaker, this legislation is fulsome in its remit, and it allows us as a small island developing state not only to be able to be protected from the vagaries of climate change as we know it and the existential threats, but of course it gives us the wherewithal to protect us from practices that may not align itself with our legislation and what we expect as it relates to our maritime space. Mr. Speaker, I just want to go on to one additional thing, because when we are talking about pollution and we are talking about protecting our maritime space, we must talk about the invasive species that we see, because that is a very important part of the discussion and how we working with partner countries, because we operate eastern of the Caribbean, but there are other countries that are western, central, that have relationships, maritime relationships with our country, whether it's trade, whether it is what happens in terms of the movement of flora, fauna, phytoplankton, plankton, all those small microorganisms, how those things impact across our waters, even beyond our continental shelf. And I just want to say, Mr. Speaker, there is a Grinch that has seek to create havoc across our waters, and that Grinch is the sargassum seaweed, as Barbadians would know. And Mr. Speaker, how we are able to treat it, because we are now looking at mechanisms with other countries to be able to boom and to allow for the ability to trap this sargassum in a way that countries can work together to prevent its unfortunate invasion. And Mr. Speaker, when we talk about maritime protection, environmental protection, there was a school of thought that as far as the Sargasso and Atlantic Sea and the Atlantic Ocean, that the algae as we know it, the sargassum as we know it, that the proliferation was caused because of an inundation of chemicals into the water supply. And when you're talking about legislation that seeks to protect the ocean space from inundation of certain chemicals, salts and various chemicals, we are trying to prevent things like the sargassum from happening, the metamorphosis of that which was normal. But I often ask the question, if not for sargassum, what would be happening to this country, this world? Because what we found in terms of our testing, and it goes back to the importance of having legislation to protect us from pollution of our ocean space. Had not for sargassum, Mr. Speaker, the ocean would be inundated and further inundated with all these chemicals. Our testing with the institute from our university from New Zealand in the Western Caribbean, Belize, Central Caribbean, Jamaica, and Barbados showed high levels of arsenic, cadmium, mercury, lead, you name it. And of course, when you go near to it, when it's decaying, the hydrogen sulfide gas. Mr. Speaker, these things, they arrive in the ocean from the stratosphere like a chicken licken episode. It came because of pollution, because of maladaptive practices, what the scientists will call the anthropogenic behaviors of mankind. And that is why this legislation is there to protect a lot of this pollution and the chemical influx that we are getting into waters. So when you are seeing this excessive growth of algae in the ocean, the algae that floats, and we call it sargassum, and recognize that it is a big threat to our marine space, we are partly responsible because we recognize that the sargassum is just taking up that which is in the ocean. So the question for us, because we also know that the ocean is unique in its behaviors, and it only reacts by negative feedback mechanism. What happens in the ocean in a natural way happens to protect it. We inundate our ocean with a lot of chemicals, with a lot of pollution, and the reaction is that we are producing now a large seaweed that is absorbing. It has the sequester ability like nothing else in the ocean. There is no plant that is able to sequester all these things like sargassum. So sargassum is basically cleaning the ocean. Unfortunately, when it gets to our shore, it is rotten, it's decaying, and it provides not only a health hazard, but an environmental hazard. That's the unfortunate thing. But what it is doing is that it is cleaning the ocean for all these harmful things because the test results identify it. So it is providing us with a cleaning mechanism. Unfortunately, when it comes to shore, it becomes a health hazard. So I'm saying, Mr. Speaker, these are the things that naturally happen within our ocean. And what scientists realized over the last couple of months is that it's not only the pollution from in the water in terms of what is happening across the ocean space, but from the atmosphere itself, because of the climate change and the extra nitrogen in the atmosphere, that the sargassum is also sequestering nitrogen from the atmosphere, taking it out of the atmosphere and causing it to proliferate and grow. So it is clearing not only the sea, it's clearing the atmosphere as well. But unfortunately, when it decays, it becomes a hazard. Mr. Speaker, I just said all that to say that how we treat to our environment, our marine space, will pretty much determine our fate. And when nature reacts, because it has to react in a negative, with a negative feedback mechanism, or way to control that which is happening harmfully to it, sometimes we feel the adverse effects of it. But that's just nature trying to heal itself. The perfect example is just what I just gave in terms of the sargassum. But the legislation speaks to the fact that what is happening in terms of pollution, once this legislation passes the test of time, that we will have more control of our EEZ, we have control of our contiguous zone, and of course, our continental shelf, which is the drop-off from that which we would see in terms of our visual score or as the horizontal space. Mr. Speaker, I endorse this legislation. I'm saying to the Member of Parliament for St. Michael, West Central, that he is on the right track and that to continue to bring legislation, because I told him the other day that I don't think that there is no single Minister of Tourism and International Transport who has brought legislation to bear and the significance of the legislation as he has. And I am saying to him to continue, because fearing God, thinking clean, and aiming high doesn't come as a whimsical experience. It's one that is lived in the trenches of Richmond Gap University. Mr. Speaker, I want to end by saying that the sea and the ocean space, once it is treated with the respect and given the resources that it needs and the legislation equally, that it can, once it is allowed to, it can stir the heart. A good, clean ocean that is doing what it's supposed to do can stir the heart. My heart is beating in all four chambers. It can inspire the imagination. I assure the Member of Parliament for St. Michael, West Central, has his imagination not only set in terms of our EEZ and our contiguous and continental zones, but the imagination far beyond Barbados, where we can say to the rest of the world, come and be part of something that we have legislated that can do good not only for our country, but equally for your country. And of course, it can bring, with a good, clean ocean doing what it's supposed to do, it can bring joy, Mr. Speaker, to the soul, including your soul, Mr. Speaker, which I know is rested firmly in the essence of the hydrosphere. Mr. Speaker, I'm obliged.
Honourable Member Michael West Central.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Let me also thank all honourable members who have spoken in the debate. I had to be away from the chamber, albeit briefly, to attend some other matters. But based on my information, I know that I was advised that all honourable members equipped themselves well. Let me, at the outset, also thank the Minister of Labour and the Ministry of Labour, who would have worked with the Ministry of Tourism and International Transport throughout the journey dealing with the Seafarers Bill. The Minister of Labour, the Honourable Member for St. Peter, would have spoken at length on the bill and all of the engagements that he would have had with the Ministry of Tourism and International Transport. And obviously, he reminded us that I also gave him an opportunity to ensure that he fast-tracked another piece of legislation to get it here before this bill got to this Parliament. So for that, we are grateful to you, Honourable Member for St. Peter, as Minister of Labour, and your team for all the work that you would have assisted us and the tremendous work and cooperation that you extended to us in respect of this bill. Let me also thank the Deputy with respect to the Seafarers Bill, the Office of Chief Parliamentary Counsel, in particular the Deputy Chief Parliamentary Counsel, Sean Bell, for, of course, her steadfast support, formalizing all the maritime drafting instructions, converting them into legislation. When the legislation gets here, it looks very simple, but of course it takes a lot of time, and sometimes I marvel when I see legislation, 200 pages, 1,000 pages, how they get it done. So we have to extend our thanks to them. I've already thanked also and express our gratitude to the Senior Parliamentary Counsel, Rhea Drakes, who also worked with us very closely, along with Sean Bell and the office in respect of the Maritime Affairs Jurisdiction Bill. And of course, I continue to thank the officers within my ministry, led, of course, by Najla King, like I said, who is here with us, and of course, the Chief Technical Officer, who's also here with us, Mrs. Dion Gibbs-Nichols. Mr. Speaker, there's not a lot to respond to in terms of the remarks made by honourable members. Suffice to thank them again, but also to thank the honourable member for Christchurch West Central for his tremendous endorsement of the bill. You know, these matters are, and other matters, of course, remain dear to the heart of the honourable member for Christchurch West Central, and he's a former schoolmate of mine as well. Let the record reflect that. And of course, and he is more adept, like I said, on these matters of the environment and matters relating to the oceans and everything else under the sky, including pharmacology. So I really want to thank him. I can't rebut anything he said because he continues to shine in an area that he knows very well. So I really want to thank the honourable member for his contribution to the bill. Mr. Speaker, there's no secret about this. The maintenance of a secure marine environment is critical for us as a destination and as a country. As I indicated, Barbados depends largely on tourism. And therefore, if we depend on tourism, we have to ensure that our marine environment is not only controlled, is not only regulated, but we have a very strong legislative framework in place to protect what helps to drive the Barbados economy. Polluted beaches, of course, would cause us no end of challenges. Mr. Speaker, an ocean can transmit many things if we don't manage it well and if we don't secure the environment, and which could, of course, have serious fallout if we are not careful. It could cause, for example, a loss of economic activity, loss of tourism earnings, and of course, jobs. And that is something that we always have to remember. And therefore, when we bring legislation to this honorable chamber, we bring legislation not only to ensure we have a very strong legislative agenda, but also a very strong regulatory framework that will support the further expansion of our maritime affairs, that will help us in terms of maritime diplomacy, of course will help us with governance as well. So strengthening maritime affairs will continue to focus on matters of safety, matters of security, of course matters through international relations and cooperation, and of course we have to ensure we continue to manage technological innovation and changes. The Seafarers Bill, Mr. Speaker, is holistic in its maritime labor protection approach. It's about protecting seafarers irrespective of their nationality, serving on boats or serving on board vessels, not only that carry the Barbados flag, but also Barbadians who are serving on those foreign vessels. The Maritime Areas Jurisdiction Rights Bill, of course, provides that regulatory regime for safeguarding Barbados as a maritime space. It regulates the activities done in Barbados. Of course, it also regulate activities beyond the national jurisdiction in accordance with international law. And both bills, of course, Mr. Speaker, will continue to help us to build on the legislation that we enacted between 2024 and 2025 in providing, in our opinion, the foundation and the enabling conditions for sustainable marine development. Mr. Speaker, last week, I had the honor in my capacity as chairman of the Caribbean Tourism Organization to be in Belize for the Caribbean Tourism Organization's Sustainable Development Conference. And in Belize, as you know, there's a lot of, the Honourable Member for Christchurch West Central knows as well, the marine environment, the ecosystems that they have. But one thing that stood out in the conference is that if we do not continue to maintain a very sustainable environment, not only for tourism, but sustainable within all aspects of the economies, then we will have a challenge. And I'm proud to say that when we look at the record, the Caribbean remains on track to building out and strengthening our sustainable development through a number of legislative initiatives, including what we've done here, or what we're doing here in Parliament today. So just thought I'll mention that. Of course, as I indicated earlier, in the Strait of Hormuz, you can see what is happening. I've been advised that you have perhaps over 20,000 seafarers in the area for approximately 69 days. Maybe tomorrow it becomes the 70th day, where they now have, under all conditions that will necessarily contribute not only to food rationing, but could potentially contribute to all sorts of problems. So we have to be mindful, and therefore in crafting the bill, I think, and I use that as an example because it is important that we recognize the significance of what we're doing here today, even addressing the issues of a pandemic and what should be done in the pandemic and what we will, of course, allow within our territorial waters. So, Mr. Speaker, on that note, I again want to thank all those officers who were involved and members who spoke in the debate. I always make the point, I'm not an expert in these matters. I always defer to the expertise that I have within the ministry. They give me good guidance, and for that I'm grateful. Of course, it is my job to approve the policy document, get it to Cabinet, and then eventually working with the CPC to get it here. So I really want to say, give them a big thank you as well because it is necessary. And with that, Mr. Speaker, I beg to move the second reading, of the Maritime Areas Jurisdiction and Rights Bill 2026.
The question is that this bill be read a second time. All those honourable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Me think the ayes have it.
Mr. Speaker, I do beg that beg to move that the House resolve itself into committee for further consideration of this bill.
The question is that the Speaker do not leave the chair and the House resolve itself into committee for further consideration of this bill. All those honourable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Me think the ayes have it.
This Honourable House is now in committee.
Mr. Chairman, permission to call the bill in parts.
Permission granted.
Part 1, clauses 1 through 4.
Mr. Chairman, I beg that Part 1, clauses 1 to 4 stand part.
The question is that Part 1, clauses 1 to 4 stand part. All honourable members in favour, say aye. Honourable members against, say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Part 2, clauses 5 to 14.
Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that Part 2, clauses 5 to 13 stand part.
14.
Part.
Question is that Part 2, clauses 5 to 14 stand part. All honourable members in favour, say aye. Honourable members against, say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Part 3, clauses 15 to 21.
Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that Part 3, clauses 15 to 21 stand part.
The question is that Part 3, clauses 15 to 21 stand part. All honourable members in favour, say aye. Honourable members against, say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Part 4, clauses 22 to 50.
Mr. Chairman, I beg that Part 4, clauses 22 to 50 stand part.
The question is that Part 4, clauses 22 to 50 stand part. All honourable members in favour, say aye. Honourable members against, say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Part 5, clauses 51 to 64.
Mr. Chairman, I beg that Part 5, clauses 51 to 64 stand part.
The question is that Part 5, clauses 51 to 64 stand part. All honourable members in favour, say aye. Honourable members against, say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Part 6, clauses 65 to 81.
Mr. Chairman, I beg that Part 6, clauses 65 to 81 stand part.
The question is that Part 6, clauses 65 to 81 stand part. All honourable members in favour, say aye. Honourable members against, say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Part 7, clauses 82 to 89.
Mr. Chairman, I beg that Part 7, clauses 82 to 89 stand part.
The question is that Part 7, clauses 82 to 89 stand part. All honourable members in favour, say aye. Honourable members against, say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Part 8, clauses 90 to 106.
Mr. Chairman, I beg that Part 8, clauses 90 to 106 stand part.
The question is that Part 8, clauses 90 to 106 stand part. All honourable members in favour, say aye. Honourable members against, say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Report.
Mr. Chairman, I beg that you now report to His Honor the Speaker the passing of one bill in committee.
The question is that I do now report to His Honor the Speaker the passing of one bill in committee. All honourable members in favour, say aye. Aye. Honourable members against, say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
The chairman of committees has reported the passing of one bill in committee. Honourable Member St. Michael West Central.
Mr. Chairman, I beg that the bill be read a third time.
The question is that this bill be read a third time. All those honourable members in favour, please say aye. Aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Mr. Speaker, I beg that we move that the bill be now passed and the act be cited as the Maritime Areas Jurisdiction and Rights Bill Act 2026.
The question is that this bill be passed and so cited. All those honourable members in favour, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it. This bill is passed and so cited. I know, yeah, of course we know that. You know. Can't be better at the same time. Seafarers.
Order number 7, sir. In the name of the Honourable Minister of Tourism and International Transport, to move the second reading of the Seafarers Bill 2026.
Honourable Member St. Michael West Central.
Mr. Speaker, I beg that the bill be read a second time.
The question is that the bill be read a second time. All those honourable members in favour, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Mr. Speaker, I beg that the House do now resolve itself into committee for further consideration of the bill.
The question is that the House resolve itself into committee for further consideration of this bill. All those honourable members in favour, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
The House is now in committee.
Mr. Chairman, permission once again to call the bill in parts.
Permission granted.
Part 1, clauses 1 to 11.
Mr. Chairman, I beg that Part 1, clauses 1 to 11 stand par.
The question is that Part 1, clauses 1 to 11 stand part. All honourable members in favour, say aye. Aye. Honourable members against, say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Part 2, clauses 12 to 31.
Mr. Chairman, I beg that Part 2, clauses 12 to 31 stand part.
The question is that Part 2, clauses 12 to 31 stand part. All honourable members in favour, say aye. Aye. Honourable members against, say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Part 3, clauses 32 to 41.
Mr. Chairman, I beg that Part 3, clauses 32 to 41 stand part.
The question is that Part 3, clauses 32 to 41 stand part. All honorable members in favor, say aye. Honorable members against, say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Part 4, clauses 42 to 78.
Mr. Chairman, I beg that Part 4, clauses 42 to 78 stand part.
The question is that Part 4, clauses 42 to 78 stand part. All honorable members in favor, say aye. Honorable members against, say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Part 5, clauses 79 to 168.
Mr. Chairman, I beg that Part 5, clauses 79 to 168 stand part.
The question is that Part 5, clauses 79 to 168 stand part. All honorable members in favor, say aye. Honorable members against, say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Part 6, clauses 169 to 199.
Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that Part 6, clauses 169 to 199 stand part.
The question is that Part 6, clauses 169 to 199 stand part. All honorable members in favor, say aye. Honorable members against, say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Part 7, clauses 200 to 218.
Mr. Chairman, I beg that Part 7, clauses 200 to 218 stand part.
The question is that Part 7, clauses 200 to 218 stand part. All honorable members in favor, say aye. Honorable members against, say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Part 8, clauses 219 to 254.
Mr. Chairman, I beg that Part 8, clauses 219 to 254 stand part.
The question is that Part 8, clauses 219 to 254 stand part. All honorable members in favor, say aye. Honorable members against, say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Part 9, clauses 255 to 258.
Mr. Chairman, I beg that Part 9, clauses 255 to 258 stand part.
The question is that Part 9, clauses 255 to 258 stand part. All honorable members in favor, say aye. Honorable members against, say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Part 10, clauses 259 to 276.
Mr. Chairman, I beg that Part 10, clauses 259 to 276 stand part.
The question is that Part 10, clauses 259 to 276 stand part. All honorable members in favor, say aye. Honorable members against, say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Part 11, clauses 277 to 283.
I beg that Part 11, clauses 277 to 283 stand part.
The question is that Part 11, clauses 277 to 283 stand part. All honorable members in favor, say aye. Honorable members against, say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Part 12, clauses 284 to 290.
Mr. Chairman, I beg that Part 12, clauses 284 to 290 stand part.
The question is that Part 11, clauses 284 to 290 stand part. All honorable members in favor, say aye. Honorable members against, say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Part 13, clauses 291 to 304.
Mr. Chairman, I beg that Part 13, clauses 291 to 304 stand part.
The question is that Part 13, clauses 291 to 304 stand part. All honorable members in favor, say aye. Honorable members against, say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Part 14, clauses 305 to 310.
Mr. Chairman, Part 14, clauses 305 to 310, I would like to move an amendment, sir. Clause 310 282, the second line, sorry, we're substituting for, and we are inserting R. So it should read relations to vessels of 500 GT, gross tons, and above carrying more than 12 industrial personnel are compliant. So I beg to move that amendment, sir. So, Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that Part 14, 305 to 310 as amended stand part.
The question is that Part 14, clauses 305 to 310, as amended, stand part. All honorable members in favor, say aye. Honorable members against, say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Part 15, clauses 311 to 385.
Mr. Chairman, I beg that Part 15, clauses 311 to 385 stand part.
The question is that Part 15, clauses 311 to 385 stand part. All honorable members in favor, say aye. Honorable members against, say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
The first to the 17th schedules.
Mr. Chairman, I beg that the first to the 17th schedule stand part. Be the schedule to the bill.
The question is that the first to the 17th schedule be the schedule to the bill. All honorable members in favor, say aye. Honorable members against, say no.
The schedules to the bill. The schedules to the bill. There are 17 schedules. The first to the 17th schedule be the schedules to the bill. This insert. The first to the 17th schedule be the schedules to the bill.
The first schedule to the 17th schedule be the schedule to the bill.
The schedules. Schedules. Plural.
Schedules
Yes.
to the bill. Honorable members in favor, say aye. Honorable members against, say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Mr. Chairman, I do beg that you report progress to His Honor the Speaker and to report the passing of one bill in committee. The report and passing of one bill in committee.
The question is that I do know report to His Honor the Speaker the passing of one bill in committee as amended. All honorable members in favor, say aye. Honorable members against, say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
The chairman of committees has reported the passing of one bill as amended in committee. All members, Mr. Michael West Central.
Mr. Chairman, I beg that the bill be read a third time.
The question is that the bill be read a third time. All those honorable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it.
Mr. Chairman, I beg that the bill be now passed and be cited as the Seafarers Act 2026 as amended.
The question is that this bill be passed and so cited. All those honorable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it. This bill is passed and so cited. Honorable Leader, govern business.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. With that, we've come to the end of today's sitting. I therefore beg to move the adjournment of the House until Tuesday, the 19th of May at 10 a.m.
The question is that this honorable chamber be adjourned until Tuesday, the 19th of May, 2026 at 10 a.m. in the forenoon. All those honorable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Meeting yes, have it. This honorable chamber stands adjourned until Tuesday, the 19th day of May, 2026 at 10 a.m. in the forenoon.